Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Monday, December 29th. Derek VanRiper, Sarris, and Britt here with you on this episode. We discuss some big happenings around baseball. We have an extension from the A's as they continue to put together an impressive core. We'll dig into the direction they appear to be heading. The Pirates get on the board with a multi-year free agent addition. The Marlins have a new closer. And we're going to talk about some of our favorite baseball things from this 2025 season as well. Britt, how are the holidays treating you?
Pretty good. I have a 1 and 3-year-old, so parents with little kids listening knows that it's fun. It's also exhausting. I feel like my voice is kind of gone, which might be just from yelling at my kids or yelling in general. But it's fun. These are the years you'll miss, when you're 80 years old, right? Just when you're in them, you just are dying for a nap or, oh, I don't know, winter break to end because they're off all of this week as well. So we are recording during nap time.
Of course we are. And for the 10 and 13-year-olds, crowd, they're already starting to be like, "Oh, I don't want to cuddle. I don't want to hug you. No, I just want to go and grind video games upstairs for hours on end, So, yeah, it's already gone. But we've been doing movie marathon nights. So we did all of the Lord of the Rings, and we did get a little bit of a couch puddle going on. And then we're now in the middle of Maze Runner, which is not that good, but it's fine as long as they get to hang out with us a little bit and aren't just upstairs doing their own thing.
Oh, I can't wait for movie age, right? DVR?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, we're not quite there
sit
yet.
And watch a whole movie. I can't wait.
And they're old enough now that we can introduce them to things we watch Speed with them, we watch The Matrix with them, we can watch
movies you want to watch.
Yeah, we watched The Breakfast Club with them. They even sat through Breakfast Club. I was a little surprised, but that one is kind of for them. It's about identity formation. And it was actually in high school and stuff, and they're thinking about that. So both of them were they were kind of into that movie.
There you go. So you've really bridged the gap to the next couple of phases, I think, for Britt and I. There's light at the end of the tunnel, but like Britt said, I think as exhausting as it is when you get the little ones, at the end of the day, there's always something I'm happy about, right? I try to remember some of the highlights of the day, and it usually is usually worth the while. Let's get into some moves. This one, I think, dropped on Christmas Day. Tyler Soderstrom signed a 7-year extension with the A's. $86 million. There's some escalators that can make it worth even more. There's a club option for 2033 in there. Soderstrom's an interesting player. He moved to left field, graded out really well there, was a Gold Glove finalist. So defensively, seems to have really found a true home, which was important for the A's, I think, before giving the extension, given that they got Nick Kurtz under control for a long time, and they already gave Brent Rooker an extension. So you look at this A's team, and you start to think, hey, they've got something cooking here in terms of a full-on core. We'll dig into that in just a second. But, I wanted to ask you, Tyler Soderstrom and this extension, what type of ceiling are we looking at? Why was it important to this team to lock him up and buy out a few years of free agency?
Yeah, so far he's been good, but I hesitate to put the great tag on him yet. And, in terms of, the skills he's shown a decent strikeout rate, a decent walk rate, a decent barrel rate. He's been pretty decent anywhere. Nothing stands out as elite. The closest might be hard hit. He's been right around 50% at hard hit rate. That's pretty good. But when you do the comps, you have to sort of shave off the very top because there are guys with 18 and 20% barrel rates. And there are guys with, Bobby Witt Jr. has a 19% strikeout rate. And these are comps that fall away when you kind of shave it down to, hey, who has a slightly worse than average strikeout rate, slightly better than average walk rate, slightly better than average for a power hitter barrel rate. Once you do that, the comps are Riley Green, which is that's on the top end. Lawrence Butler, who's also signed by the A's to a $10 to $12 million a year contract extension. Francisco Alvarez and Spencer Torkelson. So, it's not the list of like budding stars. These are all StatCast era. So since 2015, all guys under, through age 23 with at least 500 plate appearances. So it's a good list, and I think it's worth signing him to it. I would suggest though that he may not turn into the top end Bobby Witt, and that might be fine. When you sign him to $12 million a year extension, you just want him to be an above average league player for a while. And I think that most of these players have settled into that sort of thing.
Yeah, we'll get into this more later, but I wonder, guys, the A's have like quietly done this with a couple of their guys, as you mentioned, DVR. They're playing in Sacramento. They're one of two teams that didn't hit 1 million in terms of attendance. It's a minor league stadium. For those who aren't aware, they're targeting 2028 to move to Vegas. Is this all set up as like, we're going to go all in and be good the first year we get to Vegas? It kind of seems like it, right? Like, could they be good next year? Maybe. 2027 seems like they could definitely be a club that's kind of could surprise some people, especially with expansion. I think we know Jeff McNeil is kind of a veteran who's not going to be part of the next great A's team. He's there to have a little bit of veteran presence, along with a guy like Rooker, kind of one of the few guys who are like in their 30s that are actually seen as contributors for this A's team. I just wonder if it all lines up to Vegas and that 2028, because it's really this franchise's one shot to kind of not win back the fan base. I think a certain level of Oakland A's fans are never going to root for that team, but to kind of put themselves on the map, endear themselves to Vegas. Let's not forget in the NHL what happened with the Golden Knights, right? Winning that Stanley Cup, how quickly that helped that franchise go on the map and build a fan base. I wonder, though they're not going to say it, if it all roads lead to 2028 in Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if you removed the unusual circumstances that John Fisher has put the organization in as far as the eventual move to Vegas, this approach would work for just about any team as far as trying to have cost-controlled, rising star type players all over the diamond. Like it drew a comp to what Atlanta did a few years ago, extending a bunch of guys that were pre-arb. And I don't know if the ceiling of this group is quite the same as like the Acuna, Albies, Riley group, but it's at least a conversation worth having. And, I think to your point, Britt, winning will fix a lot. Like if you go into a market with no identity and you win right away, that will give you a much better chance of being popular. They could win and still be a little bit of a disaster in Las Vegas from a economic perspective. I think that's entirely possible. But then you start looking at these pieces and you say, okay, there's just no pitching right now. So like that's the main thing. And the park they play in right now, Sutter Health Ballpark in Sacramento, is weird. Eno and I spoke to Ken Arneson. We talked about Ken a little bit on the show from Weather Applied Metrics. He said that Sacramento had 56 wind-aided homers in 2025. And the previous record in a season for wind-aided homers in the major leagues was 19 at Citi Field in 2023. Now, the ballpark cuts both ways, right? Visiting players can benefit from that just as much as home players. So I bring it up because I think it creates a really unique problem until you get out of that ballpark of your pitching is likely to get hit because everyone's pitching is likely to get hit. And just to give you a sense of quality of the lineup and the core, the A's were 5th in homers on the road last season and tied for 7th in WRC plus away from Sutter Health Park. So this is a lineup that can score even away from Sacramento. But the bigger question here is, how good is this position player core? Is it like on a scale of 1 to 10? Is it a 7 or an 8 where you're looking at it and saying, that's a perennial playoff core? We're talking about Shea Langoliers, who they have through 2028, Nick Kurtz through 2030, Jacob Wilson through 2030, Rooker through a 2030 vesting option, Butler, who Eno mentioned, through a 2032 club option, Soderstrom now through the 2033 club option, and we even throw Denzel Clark in there as a phenomenal defender who they'll have through like 2031. That's a really good group of 7 players that you have for a long time. Only Shea Langoliers becomes a free agent within the next 3 years.
I mean, it's 3 guys up the middle, too. I mean, Jacob Wilson has, I think, enough glove to be a good shortstop through this contract. Shea Langoliers, I think, is an underrated catcher. As you mentioned, Clark, in the outfield. And then with Soderstrom and Butler in the outfield, I think they're both decent corner outfielders. Soderstrom was a Gold Glove finalist, as you mentioned. So, I think it is a really good core offensively. But I think that they have a hard time on two fronts. Like, I wonder if they are doing, all the right things coaching wise with the pitching. I mean, one thing that stands out for me is they were 26th last year in strikeouts minus walks as a staff. And you can say, Sutter's pretty bad for homers. And yes, they gave up the third or fourth most homers in the league. But then what do you have to do? You have to limit the walks and goose the strikeouts in order to do the most you can on balls that aren't in play. So that to me is a coaching effect to some extent. It also might be a talent effect. And then the other thing is, what sort of prospects do they have? Because I don't think that anybody's going to sign there. The only people that have signed there have really been people that have signed for too much money, like Luis Severino was a consensus overpay by the market, or been traded for. And so you've got Gage Jump and Luis Morales as 250 future value guys that are going to be in the rotation as this year or next. And I do like them some. Maybe they could trade away from some of their lower minor prospects, bat prospects, and trade for some, Josh Kuroda-Grauer is somebody that, people find, he's a AA second base prospect. Some people might value him pretty highly, and they could maybe do another type of Jeffrey Springs type trade for some pitching. But pitching is the big question for me. I mean, that's the long story short, is that I like this core offensively, but they're not going to sign pillow contract guys. And so they're stuck between either overpaying for guys in free agency or trading for them. So they'll have to use other prospects. They won't necessarily have that. The other thing that you'd like to have like the two timeline approach, or to kind of thread the needle or whatever, is to have young guys that are going to come up as your current core ages. And they can't do both things. They're going to have to trade away from the young core, the next core, or overpay in free agency. So there's a little bit of the stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to pitching.
I think it's a good core. I don't think it's a great core. I think the comp to Atlanta is dead on. I don't think they're as good. Remember when the Acuna deal was signed? It was like borderline negligent from his agent. And that was immediate reaction. You don't get that reaction with these guys because there's a different caliber of young player, right? You look at Baltimore, and people have been clamoring for them to re-sign guys like Gunnar Henderson, Jackson Holiday, like lock these guys up long term. The problem is those are great young players represented by Scott Boras. So no matter how bad you want to do it, you're not going to be able to do it. So that's the thing here too, is these are good young players. But if they were next level young players, look at Bobby Witt, what it took for Kansas City to keep him long term, right? Then Oakland would be priced out. These are very specific players, very specific deals being offered that Oakland is able to do because this is the way that they're going to compete. So I think it's worth noting there too that these are not Acuna ceiling type of players.
Yeah. That sort of came up in the Soderstrom comp conversation, right? You're like, I don't see a Soto. I don't see Julio Rodriguez, Bobby Witt Jr. Those comps all fell away once you start being like, no, that's too good. That's too, he's too good here, too good here. Lawrence Butler is a good player, but he kind of is streaky, goes in and out. But, Soderstrom has been streaky. There's a bit of a swing and miss situation with both of them. Then you have Jacob Wilson, who doesn't swing and miss at anything, but that can be a problem too, because, he doesn't really have power, and he can, swing at pitches outside the zone and kind of just put them in play. So, but altogether, what I do find interesting is that you have some contact guys in McNeil, and I expect that offense to be pretty good this year, because you have some contact guys, you have some power guys, you have some patience guys, and there's kind of, there's a little bit of everything in this offense. So I do like that aspect of it. But yeah, to compare anybody on this roster to Acuna, I mean, you'd have to really stretch Lawrence Butler's outcomes. He'd have to hit his 75th percentile outcomes to be anything close to Acuna. And I don't see, Jacob Wilson, I don't think has an outcome that looks anything like Bobby Witt or Gunnar Henderson.
The other thing with continuity that I do like, and this goes to building the fan base, is that fans now are, it's not guaranteed, but you're hopeful. These guys might be here for a while. I can maybe buy their jerseys. I can maybe have my young son love Lawrence Butler or, Jacob Wilson, or, I can actually feel like I can grow up with
But the
this group of
timeline for
players.
Vegas is so long. I mean, there's some people thinking that it won't really be until 2029. That'll be like some of the last years on some of these guys' deals, and what will they even still be here for that? Like it's awkward, and I think that they shot themselves in the foot a little bit with some of the decisions, like not to include Sacramento on any of the team clothing. Because basically this is the A's crew that may just be the in-between forgotten crew.
Yeah, and Mark Kotze's only signed for like one more year, right? I know they're in extension talks with David Forrest, the GM. Kotze is well liked, well respected around the league. I could easily see a scenario where maybe Oakland wants to keep him, but maybe he wants to go somewhere else. Maybe he wants to go to a bigger market. He's like kind of mixed between a player who also understands deeply the information and analytics side of things, that he could be a hot commodity, I think, if he doesn't stay there. So you're right. This is a very interesting time for the A's / I almost said Oakland, but it's not Oakland. It's not Sacramento.
I know. I almost say Oakland every single time I talk to them. But like the next. I mean, you'd almost. I think that if you gave them truth serum, they would wish that like this whole crew was in AA right now.
Right, like the White Sox. The White Sox had a terrific like AA rotation, so you can kind of see it coming. But you're right. Or they wish that they were moving into that stadium.
Right now,
2027.
Yeah, I think they wish they were just in a major league stadium right now. I think that's the thing they'd say with the truth serum, and maybe they'd say something else like, "Yeah, it's going to take another year longer than we think, too." Who knows at this point?
That could actually be really important. We just looked at this, right? Like if they're in 2028, that's way better than 2029.
Yes.
Yeah. I think so. You want multiple years before you start losing some of these players in your new environment. I think I like some of the other young pitchers a little bit too. Jack Perkins has been interesting. Braden Nett gets a lot of love in the Discord. Gunnar Hoagland's finally healthy and pitched pretty well in some limited innings at AAA last year. So they may dig up a few quality pitchers and actually get better results internally expected on that side. But that part of their player development is a much bigger question than their ability to identify quality position players. So definitely not the last. We're going to talk about the A's. I'm sure they will come up a lot throughout this year, and maybe they're not done as far as their offseason moves, because as Eno suggested, they may have to trade for a more established pitcher, even though they have some young guys coming up. Let's move on to another signing. Ryan O'Hearn gets a 2-year, $29 million deal with the Pirates. Britt. Pirates adding a lot of left-handed power with both O'Hearn, and the trade for Brandon Lau certainly makes a lot of sense for them. Just from an O'Hearn perspective, like this is a journeyman that kind of had a breakthrough in Baltimore, was traded last season to San Diego, but now actually gets a pretty substantial payday for a player like him. A lot of guys like this never get the multi-year deal in free agency. They just sort of drift through and get $5 million at a time and hope to stick around long enough for it to make a big difference. What's your take on O'Hearn? I mean, to me, I see kind of a more likely upgrade at DH, someone that can play first base and corner outfield, but based on the way the Pirates are built, this seems like a pretty big upgrade to the lineup regardless of where they play him.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Pirates quietly have had a pretty good offseason for them. They said they were going to spend money, and they went and spent money. At the winter meetings, the school of thought was that the Pirates had real money, and we saw them go in on Schwarber, right? Like we saw them like actually try with some of these bigger name free agents. O'Hearn is a great story. It's a guy who was ready to quit baseball when he was with Kansas City. He was essentially a platoon player, got buried, did not do well. Baltimore kind of picked him up. Was he a waiver claim or a cash considerations trade? Something like that. A very small blip on the offseason transactions. Goes to Baltimore, and they're like, hey, we know how to fix you. Let's fix this with your swing. What he really, really liked was they got like a daily data report, kind of like a Yelp review of swing decisions and things. And that really helped him like turn things around and kind of understand more of what he was doing. I think what he brings to the Pittsburgh beyond the bat is that he was, I don't want to say a veteran with the Orioles, but the Orioles were such a young team. They had very few people who would stand in front of their lockers when the team was doing bad or speak on the state of the team, or that weren't afraid to kind of talk to the media. And so Ryan O'Hearn, I think, is going to be a real positive impact on the Pirates, on some of their young players, on some of their young bats. He's a guy that is constantly out for early work. Really is great on preparing. As I mentioned, he's a guy who's going to stand at his locker and kind of wear whatever is going on with the team. I think if you're going to foster this like culture which Pittsburgh badly needs, of like, we're trying to win, we're going to win. We're not this lowly Pirates anymore. Then signing guys like Ryan O'Hearn, I understand why they went after Kyle Schwarber, right? Who has impact off the field. Ryan O'Hearn, to a lesser degree, is similar to that. So I love this move. I think you were going to see some of these guys move. The sense in the industry was after Murakami picked a place, you were going to see some of these other bats kind of come off the board. Everyone wanted to see what the market was for a guy like that when assessing some of these other guys. So good for Ryan O'Hearn getting that payday. I know he's a big part of San Diego's clubhouse in a short period of time as well. I like what Pittsburgh has done, guys. I think they have gone out and they've done the best that they can with what they have. They've added some pieces to that lineup. I think when you look at where they are, relative to a team like the Marlins who said they were going to spend, the Pittsburgh has actually gone out and shown it and proved it. I don't think they're done. I think they probably have the capacity to add another player, but I like this move a lot. 229. Good for Ryan O'Hearn, who just became a father for the first time several days ago as well. Congrats to him and his wife, Hannah, welcoming a baby girl. So like a big, big holiday in the O'Hearn house, guys. Probably lots of extra presents with that 29 mil.
Yeah, and I think, the veteran presence as well. I mean, I just think that, we've had Brian Reynolds has been the old man in the clubhouse for a while now. Just to have a different voice in there maybe might help. Brandon Lau now too. With Reynolds, Lau, O'Hearn, and Spencer Horwitz and O'Neal Cruz, they now have 5 guys that are projected to be at least 5% better than league average with a stick. I think they had 1 last year. So, what did do they have 1? Where is it? I have it open here. No, they had by WRC Plus, they had 1 player that was above average last year, Spencer Horwitz. So 5 is better than 1. And I think that some of the guys that they have put together, that we don't know where they live. Like we made jokes, the Pirates have like 18 second basemen. And those guys are still there. Jared Triolo, Nick Gonzalez, Nick York, they're all still there. They are not second basemen that have always been second basemen. They are second basemen that have been shortstops and third basemen. So I think they've shown enough versatility that any one of those guys can step into being the utility guy or being the left fielder because they don't really have a great left fielder. So this spring, those guys, Triolo, Gonzalez, York, Josh Nixon, Garcia came over in the Boston trade. I think all those guys will be in the mix for left field and third base. And whoever kind of plays the best will come out of it. One of them will be a utility guy. This is a better lineup. It's coming together, and there's upside at the places where they are worst. They are worst at short. Connor Griffin is maybe the best prospect in baseball, and they are not great in left field. Well, they've got Garcia, and they've got all those second basemen. One of those guys can figure it out. Andy Rodriguez is projected to be pretty close to league average with a stick, and he's played everywhere in his minor league career. He's been forgotten. In terms of where we're going with this Pirates team. And they did trade away from a strength in the rotation, but they still have a lot remaining in terms of strength in the rotation. And I don't think they traded away their best starters. I think they traded away from the back end of the rotation, and they can fill that back in with all sorts of guys. So, they could win a wild card this year. I think they're close enough. I mean, I'm not going to say that they're going to win the division or anything. But if they do have 6 or 7 above average bats next year in the lineup and they have that rotation, I think they could win a wild card.
Knowing that the offseason is still not over and we can laugh at teams or shred teams that have done nothing or less than we've wanted, and we can praise the ones that have been more active early, I think it's always helpful to just take a look at the WAR projections at any given time, right? And we did it with the Mets. We're like, hey, the Mets haven't done a lot of exciting stuff, but they're actually projected to still be like a top 5 team. With the Pirates, they have moved up. How much have they moved up? Well, right now, from the bottom, the Rockies projected for less than 20 WAR, which is unbelievable. From the bottom, Rockies, White Sox, Nats, Angels, Marlins, Cardinals, Guardians, Giants, Pirates. Right? So
good.
Just based on straight WAR projections, they got 8 teams behind them already. I think for me to look at them as like a really serious wild card team and upgrade them from JPs, it could happen. Like, yeah, it could happen right now, like the way they are. Probably one more bat, like one more 2 to 3 WAR bat, because that shoves them up even above the Reds, the A's, the Rays, kind of puts them in that Diamondbacks, Twins, Rangers territory. That's like a little more serious tier of a wild card team. A wild card favorite, not quite there, but better than a lot of teams if they can find one more impact bat. Who that is, how they acquire that player, I don't quite have that one hammered down. Are they really going to spend more money? Because I think, as Britt pointed out, when we're grading these teams and how enthusiastic we are about them, it's all within the lens of what they typically do and what their budget constraints, often self-imposed, allow them to do, right? And the Pirates are doing things a little bit differently right now, hopefully for the sake of getting Paul Skeens into October. I think we'd like to see Paul Skeens on that stage.
I've got a name for you.
All right.
Gino Suarez.
Yeah, I love it. I think
that fits
reasonable.
the sort of Ryan O'Hearn thing. It was probably a 2 or 3 year deal,
Yeah.
Maybe they can add, 2 or 3 million more per year than another team just to make sure he comes to Pittsburgh, and maybe that prices him out of Seattle's range or whatever, because we've heard that Seattle's interested, but they signed Naylor first, so they showed who they wanted to get done first. And in terms of, I don't think that they're in the Cody Bellinger, Kyle Tucker territory. And I'm looking at third basemen and outfielders. And in terms of, projected WAR for next year, Suarez is 5th. He's the cheapest. Another one that I do want to leave out there is Kazumata Okamoto. I think because that might be fun for them to take on some risk, and then we don't know exactly how he's going to come over. He's 30 years old, but he doesn't have the swing and miss that Murakami had. And he can play third base still. So Okamoto would be a really interesting one too, where they say, "Oh, we maybe like him more than the market, and we're willing to go to 3-50 or 3-55 or something, and take on that risk in a short-term deal." So those are the two names that I think make the most sense. Push everybody else to the outfield. You can figure out left field, with what you've got.
Do you think the way they approached the offseason so far validates or makes it more likely that Connor Griffin does get a fair shake to break camp and be on the opening day roster? Because when that first came up on the show like a month or so ago, when they said it was a possibility, I think we said that we'd love to see it, but that's not how the Pirates typically roll. Because they're doing things a little bit differently, for me at least, I'm looking at Griffin and saying there's at least a shot that if he comes in and has a great spring and shows them everything they want, they'll give him a shot. Because if they're wrong, they can send him down. And if they're right, the reason they would do it is he could beat the projection. Like, part of the reason their WAR projection comes in a little low is because they've got 2.7 WAR at short, with 1.8 of that coming from Connor Griffin. If Connor Griffin hits the ground running the way some elite prospects do, he could turn out a 4 or 5 WAR season right out of the box. Like, that is actually possible for a shortstop with tools like that. And that would change a lot about how we feel about their roster too.
That's how they become a wild card team, isn't it? Isn't that the difference?
It's got to be part of the story, right?
Yeah.
Getting something significant from Connor Griffin over the course of the year.
And to your point about how they've acted this offseason, I think the trade that really sticks in my head is Michael Burrows for Brandon Lau, because Brandon Lau is only under contract for 1 year.
Yeah.
And Michael Burrows is under contract for 3, 4, whatever many years.
Yep.
And by doing that, what they've said is we are no longer, as concerned about 4 years from now as we are about this year's team and finally being good.
Agreed.
And there's got to be some aspect of sort of fire under his ass, for Ben Charrington there, where they've got to start showing some results. And
Agreed.
What you can do when you amass these draft picks and you amass these young players is start to turn those players into players that fit your roster now and are about winning for this year. And that seems to be the kind of the focus in Pittsburgh right now.
Let's move on to another team that's at least done something less than maybe some would have expected so far. Pete Fairbanks heads to the Marlins, gets a 1-year deal, $13 million. This follows the news that Ronnie Henriquez needs Tommy John surgery and will miss all the 2026 season. So the who closes in Miami question, that didn't linger very long. They had their solution. I would assume Fairbanks pretty comfortably is their primary closer for most, if not all, of the season, health permitting. We've noticed that the velocity on Pete Fairbanks' fastball has not been consistent, and there's been a problem as a result of that.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the hard hit rate against his fastball over time, it's in decline. And I mean, it's you're not saying anything that's too surprising about a 32-year-old who's been oft injured and has seen his fastball velocity drop from 99.2 in 2022 to 97.3. So it is still good, and Stuff still likes his slider a lot, but Stuff Plus on his fastball this last year was 99, which is only slightly better than league average. And for a reliever, I would suggest is maybe even closer to below league average. So, the four seam is not what it used to be. There's always the question of, was he fully healthy last year? Will he be in better health this year? Could he turn some of that around on a short term, wanting to get back out there and get a long-term deal? Could he come back and throw 98 this year and be better? Yes. So I think it's worth it on a short-term deal. They obviously needed something in the bullpen. But one of the problems for this Marlins team is whereas the Pirates, kind of Britt was pointing to this a little bit pre-show, but not to steal your thunder, but you're right. They said they were going to spend some money, and then they gave a 1-year deal to a reliever.
Because they had, and that was their biggest need. Agreed. I know. Well, as I told you guys pre-show, I heard from multiple agents at the winter meetings that were like, hey, the Pirates is real money. They really, it's real. It's sincere. The Marlins are only offering 1-year deals. This was several weeks ago now. And what have the Marlins done? 1-year deal.
1-year deal.
Which shows me, are you trying to win, or are you just trying to not get in trouble because you have multiple grievances that the Players Union has filed against you for not spending enough money? Right? I have some questions for them. What are you doing? Are we rebuilding, or are you trying to go all in here? What's the point of signing Fairbanks for 1 year because you want all these saves if you're going to be a rebuilding team? Are you going to trade Cabrera or some of your other young arms or not?
Even O'Hearn himself represents what the Marlins should have done, because the Marlins right now have the second worst first base situation, and they have the worst right field situation, and they have the second worst DH situation. So those are places where free agency is it's made for that. They're not defensively important situations. You can go get an O'Hearn. You can go get why didn't they get in there for Munetaka Murakami? I'm not that into Munetaka Murakami, but he might have been perfect for this team, especially if they only wanted to do a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal. So I the fact that they're going to go out there with Graham Pauley, and whoever, maybe Heriberto Hernandez and Christopher Morel at DH,
right? Which was a low risk ad,
guys.
Yeah, that's the thing. Anyone can say we're going to spend, and then you get the positive PR, and everyone goes, "Yay, the Marlins are going to spend." But then if you don't spend, what message are we? Yeah, and I think that they overperformed pretty much what everyone expected. Everyone thought they were going to be a 100-loss team last year. So you have a modicum of momentum, and you have done nothing with that. Now, I know you're in the NL East. I got it. No one says you're going to go out and win the NL East. But again, like Pittsburgh, why can't you vie for a wild card spot? Why can't you spend a little money and sign some guys beyond these 1-year deals? Tell me that you're not really trying to play, right? You're just trying to not get in trouble, which might be the problem if the sport institutes a floor. You're going to see teams spend through the floor with these 1-year deals, right? Your team's not going to all of a sudden compete in all these markets. You're going to see owners spend money, $13 million on a Peter Fairbanks, to get to where they need to not get into trouble.
There is actually some defending them. I would say this. You when you said overperformed, I wanted to look real quick. They had the best win percentage of anybody within 70 runs of run differential of them. They had a -89 run differential, and they were almost 500. Everybody around them was terrible. They almost had the same run differential as the White Sox and the Twins, So those teams won 10 to 20 games less than them. So I guess they could have said, we weren't even as good as we were last year. and we are actually in year 2 of a rebuild. So
that's fine. Then trade your young arms. Then what are you hanging on to all these young pitchers for?
Yeah, maybe this is PR.
They're hard to defend because, okay, that's fine. I'm fine. You want to rebuild. But then why is Cabrera still on this team?
Yeah.
That's the part that's weird. And I think if you trade Cabrera for someone that has club control, you're not spending a lot of money, but you are getting better where you need to get better. I think the argument I often make about the Marlins is that their pitching, when it's healthy, tends to be good enough to hold up against playoff caliber pitching. They have that ability, but they're always light on position players. Maybe they get more just from a healthy Norby. Agustin Ramirez looks more like a DH than an actual catcher. Stowers had the breakout last year. Like, there's things you can like about them, but there's still too many holes. So how they solve that in the next chapter of the offseason is going to be really important. Until they prove they've changed their ways in terms of spending, it's been multiple ownership groups, it's been multiple front offices. There's no reason to believe them until they actually do it. And I think when you operate that way, that also limits the number of players that are going to be interested in taking your money, because it's not a fun situation to play in. Right? If you're in a frequent rebuilder situation, you got to pay a lot more. So then you need guys that want to play there, like just from I like Miami, I want to live there or spend most of the year there. But then you need I already won, or I already accomplished the other things in my baseball career that I really care about. So now it's just about the best possible deal. Like, it just really, really cuts down on what you can do building your team that way, which is probably why they have to do it the other way.
Then there's a little slight undercurrent of the Marlins are going to do things over the next few years that are going to piss everybody in the sport off. Like, I could see it coming. They already have. Right now, they're calling all of their pitches from the dugout. And I don't know. I haven't made a catcher more angry than when I suggested they were getting calls from the dugout in the past. That was the one time I was talking to somebody and I said something about that. Or maybe it was just a question, like, no, no, I call the games. Like, what? And so they're going to take this and they're going to do this, and other teams are probably going to follow suit, I think, because it gives them control over something that they've given to player control, and they would rather have the front office and the analytics department be in control of it. So I think this is going to go through, and it's going to piss off all the people that one knee down pissed off. And so there's going to be, people yelling about it and yelling about how the Marlins started this. And they don't need a catcher, so it's fine. But you just right now, if they were going to sign a catcher, the catcher would be like, do I get to call my own pitches or no? And I feel like there's going to be more stuff like that because they're very analytically inclined and they're willing to do things that might piss off the sport. So they will piss off the sport. So I don't know. A free agent, I don't think is really going to want to sign in Miami. They're going to be like, oh, that team that's doing all that stuff? Nah, dude. It's good. They're trying to be like the Rays.
Which that's where Peter Bendix came from. That's probably their best path forward for all of these reasons. So I guess for me, I don't think I'll ever be disappointed in that particular franchise being cheap, because they've been cheap forever. And it's just, that cycle's not going to change. Like, there's just some franchises are just stuck in a certain tier, a certain position. The Marlins are one of them. They can win despite that position if they operate on that Rays, Guardians, Brewers sort of mindset, which, in that division, again, it makes a lot of sense.
If they have money, what they should do with it, probably the extensions type stuff that the A's are doing.
Right.
Yes.
Find the people who are there that want a couple of years, want the guaranteed money, and do that. And their core is a little bit younger. Their position player core, if you look at their lineup against Pittsburgh's, it's like 2 to 3 years younger at nearly every single spot. So that actually does lend itself to those types of extensions.
Do you want to sign? I mean, Stowers was on the older age when he got there. So, I'm not sure that maybe if he has another year, you could give him something that looks a little bit like the Rooker extension, where you're like, okay, you're an older guy, but you're just a good hitter, and we like that. But Agustin Ramirez, you have a big question about whether or not he's a catcher. Norby, I don't think screams extension for me. Neither one of the middle infielders I really want to extend. So I don't really. I like the idea of extending generally, but I don't, right now, there's not a player on that roster that I'd be like, oh, we got to extend this guy right now.
Yeah.
It'd
And
be
if you look at
Marcy, I
it,
bet.
yeah, it's
Huh?
not the Rays playbook, really, if you look at it.
It'd be Jacob Marcy if it was anybody. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think
But
to
his
Britt's
quality of
point, the Rays
contact's
weren't-
not that great either.
It's
So like,
not. Yeah.
yeah.
It's
So
not.
do you really want to sign him if he's like a kind of a limp bat center fielder?
This is not what Tampa Bay does. The Rays
Yeah.
way is not signing extensions to guys.
It's just waiting and waiting.
It's waiting and selling before they get hurt and just cycling through, knowing that, getting broken guys.
It's
knowing
trading
they'll
Kyle
break
Stowers.
Yes, it is. And what's interesting is, and I reported on this like a month ago, is that there were early talks with Sarris' camp about an extension, and they kind of insulted his camp, is my understanding. Like, people took it way out of context when I said, like, they comped him to Brian Reynolds. People were like, oh my God, Kyle Sarris wants $100 million. Not saying that. They were just trying to find a comp over, what is it, 7 or 8 years Reynolds is making. So something like, something in that general, I think, comp talks were really early on. And the Marlins were like countering with like guys who had been with Cedel Rafaela, the Red Sox, who had like 50 days of service time, which is insulting, right? And so I don't think that went well. I don't think Peter Bendix's strength is player negotiations. So I don't know how well that plan would operate. And again, it's not Tampa's playbook, but they are disruptors. That's a phrase that Bendix used twice with me, the GM meetings in Vegas. They're not afraid of doing things differently. They made Gabe Kapler GM, a very like unorthodox guy with not unorthodox. He did play. He's been in the front office. He's got a lot of skills. He's been a manager, but a guy who's not afraid to think outside the box and look outside the box as well. I think that's something that they like carry with them. It's like, we are going to be disruptors.
Yeah, I think if they identify a position player similar to what the Rays did with Evan Longoria forever ago, that's the kind of guy, like, upon arrival that gets an extension.
Or extend him like before he even gets the big
something like that. That's probably the sweet spot of the extension they want. And I don't even know if they have a player quite like that in their system right now. My initial lean is probably no.
Yeah, Longoria fired his agent over. That one was also criminal.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's how it works. But yeah, if the Marlins have money, what should they do with it? I mean, find a bat, even if it's a temporary bat, because your pitching might actually surprise. You got more pitching on the way.
I hate to put Suarez on two different teams in one episode, but like, that would make sense for them too, right? Like, he didn't have to play third for them. He can start to play first for them,
Yeah.
Hey, they're in 1-year deals. Maybe they should just poke around the top of the market, see what they got.
Yeah.
Will Bregman take a 1-year deal?
Which is what the Rays have always been. There's always been that rumor, like, maybe Kyle Tucker will take like 2
1
and
year,
75
$50
from
million.
the Rays. Yeah,
2 and 75 with an opt out after 1 year. I mean, hey, you're not trying. You're not trying. Let's take a look back at this past year, though. The World Series was amazing, and it got me thinking, aside from the actual Dodgers-Jays series itself, what were some of your favorite baseball things from 2025? Could be teams, could be stories you wrote, could be storylines. Anything is fair game. What are you going to remember about 2025? And Britt, I know this question's harder for you and I because our brains are not running at full capacity right now due to the phase of parenting that we're in right now, but what will actually stick with you from 2025 aside from the amazing World Series that ended it?
I think there's a bunch of great storylines, guys. I mean, the big dumper. Will we see another season like that? I don't know. The Ohtani game, which that's all I have to say, and everyone knows exactly what game I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right? Another one that you're like,
I remember the Ohtani game.
Right. Like, what a time to be alive. Will we ever see anything like that again? I love those like individual standout moments. The Blue Jays were such a great story. The Brewers out of nowhere, just being the best team in baseball for most of the year. I think watching Clayton Kershaw's career come to an end the way it did, really cool moment for baseball. Hopefully I'm not taking all of Eno's here, but Eno's probably got 20 I haven't thought of, so I don't feel that bad. I think when you look at stuff like that locally here in Baltimore, they celebrated Cal Ripken the anniversary of 2131. Which was kind of a cool thing. You kind of forget about, you're never going to see it again. So you might as well just keep celebrating the anniversary of it because no one's ever coming close to 2131 games ever again. Those are things that I think kind of stick with you a little bit. Story-wise, unfortunately, the Detroit Tigers scandal and all of that kind of sticks with me a little bit. The Mike Trout story that I wrote, just because like are we going to ever see Mike Trout in the playoffs again? You know, that keeps like looming over every season, you know? Um, Luckily, I think a year from now, we'll be talking about lockout and labor stuff, but I'm not going to mention that because I'm not going to let that ruin 2025, which I think honestly was one of the most exciting years for MLB that I can remember in a really long time. I've been covering baseball in some capacity since 2008. I don't know if I can remember another time, start to finish, where you were like, man, it was a really fun season. If somebody told me, like, hey, we're going to relive 2025 and 2026, I might be like, all right, let's do it. I mean, Aaron Judge again. I mean, it's become like, ho hum, here comes Aaron. Like, you know, it's just like, it's ridiculous, some of the stuff that we're seeing. So those are some of the things, at least off the top of my head, that I think about when I think about 2025. I think it was a year that there was record attendance, and hopefully a lot of people became baseball fans or became more, you know, bigger baseball fans. Hopefully they found Rates and Barrels that are listening right now, and they're like, you guys are number one. This is the best part of 2025 to me. So that's where I go with it.
I tend to think of a few things. I mean, I think of pitching. So, you know, Trey Savage's, just his whole the playoff debut, that was so much fun. Just watching a pitch like that. And, you know, so I tend to think sort of backwards from that, other big sort of moments that I remember like that. I think early on, Christopher Sanchez had a double-digit strikeout game, and we were just like, the velo was there, and he sort of announced himself as like, now I am, you know, one of the aces. I'm either the ace or the second ace of this team. And in a similar way, Max Fried had a double-digit strikeout rate game in his second game, and I remember we were looking at all the different things the Yankees had changed in his arsenal and how quickly they had taken someone who was already great and made him even better. But, you know, in this household, we did watch a fair amount of Mariners because the youngest decided that, you know, he was choosing to be a Mariners fan. And so, you know, Big Dumper, you know, cussing, you know, saying we might as well win the whole damn thing. Like, I just love that because he's such a mellow guy, and it showed that he was kind of finally relaxing into his own persona. And, you know, he had such a great season that he sort of, you know, there wasn't any agita for him about like, oh, have I established myself as a leader in this clubhouse? He was just like, I am who I am. I've had a great season, and like, we are going somewhere. And it was so much great energy that the Polanco, you know, homer was, you know, just felt like it was falling into place. The fact that Naylor stole 30 bases with, you know, 5th percentile speed, and the different dueling nicknames for Josh Naylor, you know, the Big Grumper, and Thicky Henderson, like, plus he just looks like a pirate for some reason. So I see
Captain Jack Sparrow on a baseball diamond out there.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed the Mariners, and I think the Blue Jays too. Just analytic. I tend to, you know, stick to some analytical stories, so that analytically it's really interesting to watch all the Blue Jays just swing harder in the second half and turn a contact, you know, team into a power and contact team. I thought that was a really fun story. And then, you know, just personally, my favorite stories were, you know, IVB is something that people have known about for a long time, but it was fun to like, sometimes I have to remember that not everyone, you know, knows all these things, and that you can just explain something that is out there in the open. And what's fun too is that if it's been out in the open for a while, like, teams will go on the record because they figure there's no more edge left in it. So yes, IVB is something we've known about for years, but now we can get people to talk on the record about it because they don't think there's an edge, and they're not worried about it. So they can let you into sort of the thought process on it. So that was fun. And then I really enjoyed talking to Logan Webb about the cutter that was bad, but he used it against Ohtani enough that he realized that, you know, it didn't have to be just a pitch for MVPs, as he put it. It could be a pitch that he could use to make the rest of his arsenal better. So those are some of my favorite stories of the year when I look back.
The non-World Series teams added a lot this year. I mean, the Brewers, I picked them to win the NL Central on our live episode at Bear Bottle. I didn't give a reason. I just said, I don't know how or why. It's just they're going to win the NL Central. And I didn't even believe it 6 weeks into the season. I didn't believe it 3 days into the season. Remember torpedo bats? I'll remember torpedo bats.
Oh my God.
That was a thing. that happened. Trevor McGill had a meltdown about torpedo bats that was pretty epic. If you want to go back and read some great quotes following that first weekend when the Yankees scored 8,000 runs, set a new record for a series.
The torpedo bat and the kick change. That was like
the kick change.
I thought, like, early on, we were like, that's what the story's going to be this year.
Oh, yes, of the whole year.
Really? Yeah.
No, that really wasn't.
That was the story in April.
So the listeners and viewers in Discord dropped a few in there. I put this question out to them late last night. Jay Hamas says, Acuna's basically flat-footed throw from deep right to nail a runner at third who he had absolutely no business getting. That was one of the best gifts of the year. That was awesome. That was a great play that you just, as soon as you hear it, you're like, oh yeah, that was a sick throw. And I might not see a throw like that again for a long time. SLGS Reds, Brandon Young taking a perfect game into the 8th against the Astros. I completely forgot about that one. That one happened in August. Well, it didn't even happen that long ago.
DPH noob, bringing up the Yamamoto no-hitter to losing the game. That was chef's kiss.
Oh my God. That was one of the craziest games I've ever seen live.
That was an absolutely absurd turn of events in that one. Joe Lowry.
That was on Cal night in Baltimore.
That was Cal night at the Yard. Yeah. That's why there was some magic there. Denzel Clark's catch in Anaheim, that was the one where he almost fell over the wall because he climbed it, caught the ball like Spider-Man, and his momentum like almost spun him over the top of the wall. That was an incredible catch. Denzel Clark had a few of those in very brief time with the A's this year, which is why I think we're all pretty excited to see what happens with him in the next couple of seasons. Scooble, this one was also from TPH Noob. Scooble, complete game and throwing 102.6 on his last pitch of that game. That was pretty absurd.
Yeah. Yep.
I think Baby K248 was at the game Eno was talking about. Trey Savage's playoff debut in person. That was just an absurd outing. Also had the Soto and Naylor getting over 30 stolen bases on there as things he'll remember. Street of Baker has Randy Arozarena running as hard as he possibly can off the bat, trying to get a double in a 13-0 game off a 55-mile-an-hour pitch from Javier Sanoa to get thrown out clearly, but asking for a review in the dugout laughing at it. Good moment for sure.
I missed this one.
I do remember seeing the highlight of that. I wasn't watching that game when it happened. If a game's 13-0 and it's not the Brewers beating up on someone, chances are I've flipped over to another game.
Agreed.
No, Rosarena's like, I've still got one more good contract in me. I want this double.
He wants that double. Yeah. That's Street Baker also had Will Klein, 72 pitches, whatever it was in the World Series, 40 above his career.
I mean, he's just a great story of sort of back off the couch, like, barely in the game, goes to drive line, revamps his pitch mix, ends up on the Dodgers roster because they just, I think he was the replacement for Tanner Scott's injury.
I think so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has in a huge role in a huge game and throws more pitches than he's ever thrown.
Great
guy who was really there only for that specific situation, having to show up and then execute through in that situation.
Wait, who was the Mariners pinch hitter that they needed in that game? Oh, Leo Rivas.
Oh, Leo Rivas, yeah.
Yes, Rivas, yeah.
Yes. Ridiculous, right? It was like, I can't remember the only person that Googled that guy when he came up. Who are you? And it's your birthday.
It's kind of like the defensive replacement at second base.
Yes.
Some other random moments that I've had stuck in my head. Patrick Bailey's inside the park walk-off home run that just rolled down the Oracle Park warning track. That was one of the weirdest home runs ever. The Trevor Story one that Jhonkensy Noel tried to corral at Fenway. That hit Noel and hit the foul pole. That was a weird one. Like some of those goofy things are also pretty high on my list. I mean, the Brewers had an amazing regular season. They had a great playoff series win over the Cubs, but Andrew Vaughn homering off of Yamamoto in his debut. That was the game they knocked Yamamoto out in the first inning. That was like a weird regular season game that just sticks in my head. And then Brandon Woodruff coming back against the Marlins and just painting. Like, he was so good in that first start back. That was just a cool moment for a guy that went through the major shoulder surgery and had multiple setbacks on his rehab assignment.
Was the was it Devers that hit the home run?
The Devers trade.
The 8-minute
the
Devers
Devers
home run
trade,
trot.
but then,
yeah.
Yes.
And then he got to San Francisco and he hit a home run and he walked really slowly. And by the time he got to home plate, like half of his infield had been thrown out. Right? Was that before or after the trade?
That was in
Oh my
Colorado
God.
after the trade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, nobody mentioned the trade either. That was like a crazy trade.
I do remember being like, "What?" That was the biggest trade of the year for sure.
It's one of
That
those,
was me about to eat dinner on Father's Day, looking at the scroll on the screen and just going, "Nope, no emergency pod. Time to eat." That was my reaction to the Devers trade. It's like, why? Why right now?
It's baseball. That's why I don't miss being on a beat. I saw all these moves happen on like Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. People are trying to confirm stuff, and I'm like, not my problem anymore.
I had a fun little mini storyline with Devers where in the first scrum that he's there, I ask him, "Oh, you kind of have the opposite field power, and that's not great in this park for you as a lefty. Don't you want to yank it down the line? You going to change anything about how you go?" And his answer was like, "Oh no, I'm a great hitter, and I know what this has worked forever, and I'm going to do it." And then he hit an opposite field homer like that night or 2 nights later or something. And afterwards he said, "I told people I'm a great hitter and I go the opposite way and that's going to work in this park."
You were the people in that case?
That was my question.
I was the people.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Oh, yeah. So a great year all around. Drop us some notes in Discord if you got random moments and storylines and things that you remember. Plenty to look back on. Couple of quick news items before we go out the door. Smaller news items that I wanted to make sure we got to today. Zach Eflin staying in Baltimore. It's 1 year, $10 million mutual option. I actually like this. I think Eflin was very hurt last year. And if you look back at his track record, it's easy to give him a kind of a below average health grade, but he did have a couple of pretty healthy seasons in 23 and 24. Got over 160 innings, I think, in back-to-back years. Could actually be a pretty important piece just to help the Orioles return to the postseason. I don't know if you look at Eflin and say, surefire playoff, game 3 starter, but certainly good enough to get you there if he's healthy.
Yeah, I saw someone declare the Orioles rotation the best in baseball.
What?
I think they need another arm still. That's aggressive.
How drunk were they?
Who said that?
Why did they say
A
that?
random fan? Orioles fan 1999? Like,
Fangraphs has them 18th.
Who said that they have the best rotation in baseball?
This is a good back end of the rotation move. I like this move. It's a good depth move. He's signing for less than what our Tim Britton projected and many people thought he might get on a 1-year deal. But the Orioles still have money. They still have money to spend on another starter. So
I mean, the only
they're
teams
not the best
that are
rotation in baseball. They still need they need another pitcher.
Yeah, the only teams with the worst rotation that we would consider playoff friendly teams are the Cubs, Astros, and Padres. And the Padres have a big incomplete asterisk next to their names, I think.
Yeah, they got to. Yeah. Well, the Cubs too. I mean, later for another day, we'll get into like what are some of these teams doing, man? It's almost New Year's.
Hey, they're working on the bullpen first. Start at the end of the game and work your way back to the front.
I like some of the Cubs moves. They've added
and
Hunter
the
Harvey.
Stuff is fine. Yeah,
Harvey, still Maton, Hobie Milner. So they've got Jacob
Cubs fans
Webb.
are mad though. It's time you're the Chicago Cubs. Go spend some money.
Flex some muscle.
It's like the Yankees.
I think the only thing that's interesting about Harvey going to the Cubs is that it takes away, or at least reduces the likelihood that he's a full-time closer. I think Daniel Palencia is the closer again, even though they used him in a pretty flexible role in the playoffs. Harvey, to me, is the kind of guy, skills-wise, who's good enough to close. If he had signed in Miami, he would have been the favorite to close, but instead they went the Fairbanks route. If he signed with the Angels, there's a bunch of teams where Harvey could have gone and maybe been the capital C closer. With the Cubs, he's probably second chair, primarily the 8th inning guy, unless Palencia gets hurt again.
Agreed.
But they might have given him the most money because, he's so often injured. He was going to get a 1-year deal. And so the Cubs maybe gave him more money. And I think, most agents know in this situation, teams are going to look past who saves, right? Teams are going to look at your stuff number and your velo and your strikeout rate. And so all those things could be great in the Cubs pen. They may like some of the things that the Cubs are, I would say, near forefront when it comes to fatigue, modeling fatigue, and trying to keep their pitchers healthy. I'm not saying that they've succeeded way better than anybody else, but they've invested in that portion of their. So that might have been the argument they made to Hunter Harvey. We can try and keep you healthy. So I think that's what I wanted to look. Quick shout out to Andrew Haney. He's retiring. And you know, I wish him the best of luck. You know, he was a guy that was always super inquisitive. And I think he hit an Angels organization that wasn't really there to wasn't really equipped to optimize his stuff. I think he's never going to be a guy that I don't even know if he'll make it into the Hall of Very Good. There's kind of like a Twitter guy that says the Hall of Very Good. I don't know if he'll be in the Hall of Very Good, but he will forever be in the Remember Some Guys portion of
a good
baseball.
Immaculate Grid answer. Bounced around enough and did some stuff. So yeah, congrats on the retirement. Last few moves, I'm going to read them all off, and you guys can each react and tell me if you like any of these ones. I get through them all. The Reds added 2 outfielders. They traded for Dane Myers and signed JJ Bleday, just $1.4 million for 1 year. Sean Newcomb went to the White Sox. He's going to have a chance to start per Will Salmon. It's 1 year, $4.5 million. Could end up back in the bullpen like he was with the A's last year. Rob Refsnyder goes to the Mariners on a 1 year deal, $6.25 million. And maybe interesting because we saw lefties have a lot of success last year, so those small side platoon guys might be at a bit of a premium. Pedro Avila, back from NPB after 1 year, signed with the Guardians. He had a sub 20% K rate in Japan. And former prospect, still current Blue Jay, Ricky Tiedemann, expected to be healthy for spring training. Anything move the needle for you guys there?
One thing that sort of pops off the page for me is Newcomb signing in Chicago instead of someplace like San Francisco. I'm working on a piece right now with Andrew Baggerly about the fact that you could say, you know, oh, San Francisco's the perfect place to go on a pillow contract. You pitch to Patrick Bailey and you pitch in that ballpark. And not to steal too much thunder from the story, but you know, now analytics departments can take Patrick Bailey out of your numbers, you know, and they can take the ballpark out of your numbers. So, you know, do you really want to go there and have like a good ERA that every analytics team knows is, you know, 50% Patrick Bailey and 50% the park, right? One of the people we talked to for the piece said, I want to know who the director of pitching is. I want to know who the pitching coach is. I want to know what they want to do with me and what they see as an opportunity. I want to know where I am on the depth chart. Those are the things that are more important to me. And, you know, with Brian Bannister in Chicago, Sean Newcomb he literally could have signed with the Giants, I bet. You know what I mean? And he could have had a chance to start with the Giants. But you know, here with the White Sox, maybe he liked something that Brian Bannister had to say, or he felt the opportunity was better to really solidify a role that he wanted.
Yeah. The White Sox pitching, though, is getting a lot of good positive buzz around the industry. I feel like I've heard that,
especially the young guys and Noah Schultz and Grant Taylor.
Right. We talked about AA. Their AA rotation this past year was really good. Is Tiedemann the guy that they're putting in the bullpen now?
I think they're going to use him more as a reliever, like a multi-inning reliever, and just try to manage his workload and get him through a healthy season. There's not really a spot for him to start, at least as the depth chart's built right now anyway. But just good news that he's finally healthy after a lot of injury issues and could be a really important late-inning guy by the end of the season, depending on how things break.
I mean, crazier things have happened.
There's a possible opportunity in that bullpen. I mean, like, you know, Hoffman's velo was down, and Louis Varland likes to throw middle too often. So, you know, there could be an opening at the end of that game. That'd be maybe that's a bold prediction. I mean, that's something that like you don't see happening now. But Tiedemann closer, you know.
I'm thinking about those 2 Reds outfield additions and just imagining how sad our friends that root for the Reds are right now.
Oh God.
It'll get better, guys. I'm sure.
Is that what you do? The poke the team with the stick meme, right? Like
that's what it sounds like.
We had Kyle Schwarber. We wanted Kyle Schwarber.
We were in the hunt for Schwarber.
Kyle Schwarber. We got Dane Myers and JJ Bleday instead. Yay!
Feels mean to Dane and JJ in this case. They, you know, they're just trying their best, man. Like JJ Bleday in 2024 actually put together a really good season, 3.2 WAR, but that's more than what he's put together in parts of 3 other big league seasons combined.
Yeah, they may have you know, something on the hitting side that they think they can change. With Myers, I think what's interesting is that he was bad defensively 1 year, and then last year he was really good. This matters because he's not that great offensively, so they must see him as a platoon partner in center for Friedel. So they're betting that the good defensive numbers are the reality here.
Yeah. I think of the two, I'm a little more optimistic they get 400 plus plate appearances out of Bleday if they get that much out of either one of them. Sorry again, Reds fans. We are going to go on our way out the door. Reminder, you can join our Discord with the link in the show description. We hope everybody has a safe and happy New Year's. We are back with you on Friday.
Thanks for listening.